Why, sometimes I believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. I thought this was a great quote, and certainly one that little kids do this every morning. How many of you have children? You know, kids, there's a humorous speaker in the United States. His name is Art Linkletter, and he's dead now, but he used to have a show, and it was called Kids Say the Darndest Things. And there are all kinds of things on YouTube about it. If you ever get a chance and you want a really good laugh, read these things, because the kids, you know, kids always come up with things that just floor you with what they say. One of the things I love the most about teaching is that I laughed a lot during the day, because I never knew what was going to come out of their mouths. And some of the things they said were very profound. But I think what we do sometimes is we get so busy with running the day that we forget to think about the impossible things. And it's you know, it's just part of the educational process. We get caught up and with what we have to do. Well, they've got tests, they've got things that they have to get done. But you know, sometimes it's just good to take a break and think about the impossible things. Think about what it's like to be a turtle. Actually, I never thought about that one, but I'm sure I'm going to be thinking a lot about it now. These are some of the things, and I want to take a minute for us to discuss these. I think most of you could kind of do this at a table, but there are 16 habits of curious people. So what I'd like you to do for a minute is brainstorm as a group, talk to each other, and decide if you could pick 3 of these that you really thought were important to focus on. I want you to pick 3. Now we're going to talk about it for a minute, and some of them may not make a lot of sense, but talk for a minute and decide which 3 of these 16 habits do you think are the most important. And I'm going to give you 1 minute to talk about what you think the habits are that are most important for a creative person. Okay? Let's get started. And I'm going to come around while you're doing that. Just take a minute, take a look at them, and decide which of these 16 thoughts, habits, are really the ones that help create a creative person. Not afraid of persistent, not afraid of and for those of you who don't Mr. Gerber here in the back, who we've already been discussing. Yeah, how'd you like that? We've been talking about you. Mr. Kazuri, welcome. Let's take a few more minutes on this. And there are a couple on there that I think that we really haven't discussed, so I want to spend a little time on those. Choose a spokesperson, and you know, everybody point at one person and make them do it.
The first one I think is the most important for the situation.
The first one, full of curiosity. All right. Did you have 2 more in this group?
Not afraid of failures.
I'm sorry?
Not being afraid of failures.
Not being afraid of failure. Good. What else?
And the value of ideas.
Okay, a variety of ideas. All right, this group?
Number 5.
Number 5, full of enthusiasm.
Yes. Then number 6.
Persistent.
And number 16.
And number 16, not afraid of failures. Okay? Over here?
Full of curiosity. Number 1.
All right, full of curiosity.
And not afraid of failures.
Not afraid of failure.
Persistent.
And persistent. Okay, I'm hearing a lot of the same things. How about this group? Okay, 5 is fine. That's fine.
We have 4 out.
All right, 2, problem friendly. 7, often dissatisfied. I've been waiting for that one. All right, what else? 14, good at reframing the situation. 11, oh, we're ready to go for the big kill. Okay? 14 and 16. 14 and 16. All right, not afraid of failures. A lot of you are saying not afraid of failures. Good. I think that's something you've taken away from this conference. All right, this group?
Full of curiosity, and I think that leads to risk-taking and problem-friendly as well.
Problem-friendly.
And not
And
afraid of
often
failures.
not afraid of failures.
And good at reframing a situation.
Okay, well, none of you have talked about number 3, valuing their ideas. Okay, y'all said valuing their ideas. There is a new movie that's out about the guy who created Facebook. I don't know if it's come out here yet, but it is an amazing movie. He is the most unlovable person imaginable. When I watched the movie, I thought, you know, I really don't like you. But this guy was so focused on what he was doing, and he knew he had an idea that was great, even though no one else valued it at that particular point in time. Think about some of the greatest thinkers of our time. Originally, when they came up with their ideas, people didn't value it. The workshop that I had the other day, we talked about Galileo. The first idea he had nearly got him burned at the stake. And it took really several hundred years before it was accepted. The only reason he wasn't burned at the stake was because one of the Medici family took him in and hit him. So these are some of the things, you know, think about Thomas Edison. 10,000 tries before he got the light bulb right. But he knew he had a good idea. So you have to value your ideas. The problem with creativity, though, is that somewhere along the line, you've got to find somebody else that values your ideas, too. Now, one of the other things that we talked about was the often dissatisfied. How many of you have ever seen that child that no matter how times they do it, they tear that paper out? Oh, it's not good enough. My child is the often dissatisfied child. Yeah, and would just tear things up and would get so upset. And I said, why are you doing this? And she said, because it's not just the way it needs to be. And you know, at first that really would worry me. I thought, oh gosh, you know, she's going to be so ticky about things that she's not going to be able to move on. But it wasn't until she hit about 8 years old that I started seeing she was really thinking beyond what I thought she should. She was thinking, no, I need to have it like this. And eventually she got to the point where she wasn't tearing the paper up anymore. And you know, as a teacher, a lot of times, you know, when we have limited amounts of paper and the kid tears the paper up, what's your first thought?
Wasted resources.
We don't have that much paper. So, you know, sometimes though, and I learned this teaching art because paper was very precious, and I would tell the children how much each piece of paper cost. And I said, this is what this, I said, I want you to understand and value this sheet of paper. But I also learned that there was a point in time that sometimes they needed to throw the paper away and start again. And I would be clicking off in my mind, okay, I'm going to have to use how much of this month's salary to get extra paper? So these are some of the things that sometimes it's important to let them find that. Y'all did a great job on that.
Well, I would add, like, sometimes I felt that whatever my child had written, she was writing poetry. And I thought it was always, when I would read it, I'd say it's good enough. I'd say, okay, keep it. And she'd say, no, tear it out or rewrite it. And I would say, okay, just give it to me, I'll keep it. And she said, no, you can't keep it because it's not what I have written. I don't want to do it.
And you have to be able to respect that about the learner. That sometimes if they're not satisfied with it, maybe they need to do a little more. Maybe we need to give them a little more time. And as a teacher, that's really hard when you're on a deadline and you say this should be done at this point in time. I teach thesis. I teach students how to write their master's thesis. It's about a 60-page document when they're finished. And I give them deadlines for things. Because if I don't, they'll wait until the last minute. But I've also found that those deadlines have to be flexible. I had a student who came in the other day, one of the best students in my class. He was in a dead panic. And I said, I'd like you to have about 15 pages written on your literature review. Well, he came in and he goes, Dr. Wilson, you're going to kill me. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, I've written 5 pages and I just can't get any further. I'm stuck. And I said, all right, tonight's class, go home, write. We sat down, we outlined some things. I sent him home. And because he came in and he told me, he said, I'm going to drop this class because I just don't think I can do this. I said, yes, you can. I know you can. I've worked with you for 2 years. I know you can do this. Go home, take a little time, relax, write. Make an appointment with me before the end of the week and let's see where you are. Well, he came back in with 23 pages. Almost finished. But he needed that little bit of flexibility that I could give him. Now, we don't always have that luxury. You just don't always have it. But sometimes, when you can, you should.
Because rigidity can kill the creativity.
Pardon?
Rigidity can kill the creativity.
It definitely can, and sometimes you just have to give it. Well, and you know, because of what we do and the restraints that we have on us as teachers, sometimes you can't help but have to worry about that. Somebody's breathing down your neck, someone from above you, whether you're a teacher, central office. I know as a principal, I felt like I got breathed on more than I ever did in the classroom, because I had all of these, I had 100 teachers I was responsible for, 1,100 students under 10 years old, 17 sections of kindergartners, God help me, and they were busy little kindergartners. So you have to think about that. Now, one of the things that we need to talk about in the primary classroom is how creativity happens. And there's a new taxonomy for Bloom's. And originally Bloom's was a psychotherapist, and he wrote a philosophy about how he thought the learning process occurred. And it happened in 1956. So this, for years and years and years, educators used this, and at the top of the chart was evaluation. Well, in the late 1980s, they started revising this and started thinking about how do children really learn? And it wasn't about evaluation at the end, because evaluating should really come before and after a product. It shouldn't be the end result. It should be something that's happening all the time. And you know, they talk today about creativity not being in a nice, smooth, straight line. It's not. The ideas should be going different ways. It's like a pinball machine. They go all kinds of directions. You bang back to something else and come up with a new idea. Now, these, you start with remembering, you go to understanding, you go to applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Now, I think all of you that have had education have probably seen this. So let's move on so we can talk. Now, Howard Gardner's book, 5 Minds for the Future, is a fairly new book. And he talks about the fact that he's taken all of these intelligences, how smart are you, where are you smart, but said that we're going to have different kinds of mindsets for the future that are going to be important to us. There's going to be a disciplined mind, someone who's mastered at least one way of thinking, very cognitive, thinks in a straight line, very linear thinker. You probably got kids like this in your classroom. The synthesizing mind, someone who can take lots of ideas and make something out of it. The creating mind, somebody who's breaking new ground, going beyond. One of those kids that might be making you a little bit crazy in class. Usually your most creative students may be your biggest problems in class. Well, not always, but sometimes they are. I like to think that I was a creative child too. And my mother tells me constantly what a problem I was. But sometimes those kids are the ones that they want to go a little further than you want to let them go. Now, the respectful mind is someone who notes what you're saying. They take it in, they think about it quietly, and you've got those kids in your class, the one that always sits in the back and is very quiet, never says anything, but is soaking everything in. And then last, the ethical mind, someone who ponders the nature of work. What are we supposed to be doing? How should we be doing it? What's going to make our world a better place? Clint this morning, little Clint who wrote the Turtle Clint. What kind of mind do you think Clint was? Creative. What else? He was ethical. Highly ethical. He was thinking very deep thoughts. Now, he wasn't thinking in a disciplined fashion. He was all over the place in his ideas. But that doesn't mean it was a bad idea. It was beautiful. So you can have different characteristics of all of these things, but you'll find that you have students that kind of fit that almost perfectly, but all of us are a combination of these things. Now, we're going to look at creativity models and how they actually happen, because that's one thing we haven't talked a lot about in the conference, and all of this is on the wiki site, so it's all there. But the first thing that I think you have to think